Hey all, in tonight's video we're going to talk about the human heart, but in this case specifically the heart problems or common heart problems that we see in our human heart. So let's go ahead and get started. The three big problems that we see with the human heart is cardiovascular disease or CVD, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, and arteriosclerosis, and this is plaque buildup in the vessels. Okay, now hypertension and arteriosclerosis can lead to cardiovascular disease. All three of these can add up into the end event, which is a heart attack. Okay, so cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and arteriosclerosis are three of the most common problems that we find with our hearts today. Cardiovascular disease specifically is the #1 killer in the United States. It kills more people than cancer every single year in the U.S. Now, cardiovascular disease is not rampant worldwide, especially in countries that do not have what would be considered a westernized diet. Westernized diet consists of a large amount of protein and carbohydrates, okay? Specifically, large amounts of processed carbohydrates and way too much protein. That extra quarter pounder with cheese you get at McDonald's, or that 12 to 16 ounce steak you guys love, that is way too much protein than what your human body is designed to see. So very rural areas, for instance, they did a long-term study, a 25-year study in China. And the reason they chose China was because there is this huge disparity in populations there. By that I mean there's a group of people that are very westernized. They live in the big cities. They live a very quote-unquote Western lifestyle. And then you still have a very poor group of people that live primarily on rice and vegetables, very rural outside of the quote-unquote westernized influence. So they compared these two different populations over a period of 20 years. It was the longest study ever done of this type. And what they saw was the population that was in the rural, quote-unquote, poor population had less than 10% of their population suffered from cardiovascular disease. And the people that lived in the cities, your westernized people, they had a much higher percentage than that. Okay, so versus approximately 10%, and then approximately, I think it was something like 40%. I'll have to double check my numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was something around 40% was caused by their diet. Okay, so that was really the root cause. The main difference between these two subgroups of people was just what they ate, whereas these guys primarily ate proteins, carbs, and this, that, and the other. Rural people didn't get as much protein, didn't get the refined carbs that we have. So diet plays a major part in what is causing a real epidemic here in the United States. So back in 2006, 831,272 deaths were recorded. Roughly 34% of all deaths were in the U.S. caused by cardiovascular disease. And it is predicted to be around 81 million people right now in the U.S. that has CVD, which again is cardiovascular disease. Now, cardiovascular disease is not just a heart attack, okay? It's part of it, but there are many diseases that are attributed to cardiovascular disease. So here are the diseases of CVD. You have heart attack, high blood pressure, arteriosclerosis, stroke, and heart failure. Okay, I'm not going to go into too great depth on what each of these is. We'll talk about heart attack, high blood pressure, and arteriosclerosis. Stroke, we're not going to talk about too much, and heart failure, we're not going to talk about too much. But do know that those are types of diseases that you can get that would be considered a cardiovascular disease. So diving deeper into the heart attack or myocardial infarction, the MI, all right, occurs when blood is blocked from entering the heart, and we call that ischemia. Okay, so ischemia again is when it occurs when the blood is blocked from entering into the heart. You can see a diagram over here. So we have this plaque buildup, this arteriosclerosis, which you'll learn about here in a second. That's what it's called when there's plaque buildup in the artery. And then we have blood flow is constricted, tighter as more plaque gets built up. And then eventually what happens is a blood clot which came from typically what happens is throughout normal life, your arteries will get little tiny tears in them. And just like when you get a little tiny tear on your skin, a scab forms, okay? But this time it's on the inside of your artery. And then as it happens on the outside of it, whenever you have a scab on like a knee or an elbow, the scab will fall off into a tiny chunk. Well, that tiny chunk on the inside of the artery now floats freely in the artery. Now, normally it's a tiny little speck and it doesn't cause too much harm because it's got a large artery to travel through. But those people suffering from cardiovascular disease, specifically arteriosclerosis with this blocked portion of the artery, now has a much, much smaller area to get through. And when that blood clot hits it, it can't get through it, which means it blocks all of the blood from flowing through. And if you look at the zoomed out picture going this direction, you can see when blood can't get there, and this is the coronary artery, when blood can't get to this part of the heart, the muscle dies. And when this muscle dies, it no longer can contract. And if it can't contract, it can't push blood to the rest of the body. Okay? So if this area of the heart is what's affected, this is going to be the left ventricle area. It's going to have a hard time pushing that blood up to the aorta and into the rest of the body. So it can't deliver oxygenated blood to the body. That's a bad thing. That means you die. Okay? So that is a myocardial infarction, otherwise known as a heart attack. And this is a picture of a heart, pretty damaged looking, after a heart attack has occurred. And you can kind of see just how much damage has occurred, right? So what are the causes of heart attacks? Well, we have arteriosclerosis, and again, that is the buildup of fatty tissue in the vessels themselves. And that can happen either in veins or in arteries. Now, it's more damaging in arteries because, remember, arteries are smaller than veins. Their openings are not as big. So it's easier to get a blood clot and really block up an artery, okay? But it does also happen in veins. This buildup, this arteriosclerosis, is simply called plaque. So what are the causes of arteriosclerosis? Simply a heavy diet of high cholesterol and fatty/fried foods. So here's a nutrition fact. We got a lot of cholesterol per serving. So in 6 ounces, we get 42% of our daily allotted amount of cholesterol. Plus, we also have pretty good amount of fat, okay, and some, well, high carbs. And because this is in a box, more than likely this is refined carbohydrates, which also is a bad thing. If you're highly interested in figuring out how to not or reduce your chances of getting a heart attack later in life, don't eat anything on the inside of the aisles of a grocery store. So if this is your Publix, okay, and in here, these are your aisles. And around here, the outside of it, you have your bakery, you have your deli, you have your veggies, and you have your meat. Okay? You want to stick primarily to this vegetable area. A little bit of deli is not bad, but remember, most of this stuff is processed meat. Meat here, I'd go free-range beef or free-range chicken if I can. Really limit the amount of red meat that you eat. If you can, supplement the protein here with lentils or nuts like almonds are very good sources. But you mainly want to eat vegetables, really. I know that sounds not a lot of fun, but if you really want to reduce your chances of a heart attack, stick to the outside rim of the grocery store. Stay out of the inside where all this refined stuff is. Okay, all of these boxed cereals and boxed food. Things that need nutrition labels are not good things to eat, in a nutshell. So this is a picture of several different arteries. This is a normal one right here. Okay, and then we have a tiny tear in the wall. This tiny tear opens up a little area for fatty deposits to start growing. And then from there, more and more fatty deposits can kind of stick together to each other, making this pathway for the red blood cells to get through much smaller. And eventually, if we have a blood clot further up in the artery, that blood clot can block the remaining hole. No blood can get through. You end up with a heart attack. Now we'll go into hypertension, which is otherwise known as high blood pressure. And this is the silent killer. Okay, it does not give a lot of warning signs. But your arteries and your veins can get blocked just as easily, and if it doesn't happen around the heart, it can just stop blood from getting where it needs to go, and if it happens to be an artery delivering oxygenated blood to the brain, you have an issue. Okay, so there's too much pressure in the vessels, and it primarily affects your arteries a little bit more than your veins, again, for no other reason than the arteries are just smaller than your veins. So the causes are maybe you have an issue with your heart, or you have arteriosclerosis, which is a blockage in the vessel. Again, that plaque stuff, high stress can cause it, or just poor diet. And this is really the number one cause of hypertension is bad diet, no exercise. So taking a look at these pictures, these are causes and risk factors. Your DNA does play a role. I have family history. Most everybody in my family has high blood pressure. I currently don't, or at least I didn't when I started at Berkeley. And you kids may or may not have increased that. I'm not sure yet. I haven't checked my blood pressure in a while. Fatty food, being a couch potato, growing old, okay, eating fatty fries, looking like this person, eating sugary drinks, or adding too much salt are all causes. The symptoms are kind of a mystery. You know, there really aren't that many besides doing your heart, your blood pressure on a regular basis. So this is a cuff and this is the gauge, and they pump up and they count the number of beats. Now remember, the normal blood pressure, a normal blood pressure is 120/80. And this is the systolic and this is diastolic, and you don't need to know those, but that's what they are. So systolic, this number represents the pressure that is in your arteries when the heart is constricted. And what that means when the muscles have flexed and they're pushing blood out of the heart and into the arteries to deliver that oxygen. So that's why the pressure is higher here, all right? This bottom number, the diastolic number, that is when the heart is relaxed, okay, in between beats. No extra pressure with blood getting pushed through the artery system, all right? So that is normal blood pressure, is 120/80, all right? Prevention is simple. Don't eat crappy food. Exercise regularly. Eat a lot of vegetables. There really isn't any secret pill out there, all right? There are medicines and medications that can control your blood pressure a little bit. There's also medicine to control the amount of cholesterol in your body, because your cholesterol numbers can get out of whack, which causes a lot of this other stuff as well. But it comes down to, do you want to live your life on pharmaceuticals, or do you just want to eat a few more, green vegetables like broccoli? Our Geek of the Week this week is Dr. Robert Jarvik. He was born in 1946. He attended and then dropped out of medical school in Italy, was rejected by at least 12 schools. He kept at it. He eventually earned his medical doctorate while working as a research student of University of Utah. His claim to fame is that he created the Jarvik 7. So Jarvik is your geek, and he invented the world's first totally artificial heart. That's this guy right here. And that artificial heart has been known to add as little as 10 months, but up to 14 years of added life. So who is he? He is Robert Jarvik, Dr. Robert Jarvik, and he created the world's first totally artificial heart. All right, and that'll do it for this particular video lesson tonight. And your video secret number is going to be 52. Okay, 52 is your video secret number tonight, and I will see you in class tomorrow. Don't forget to answer your questions. Bye now.